Hey everyone, it's Karley Hall and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's tutorial is for a beginner Cricut user. So if you are new to Cricut or you've never made a cake topper, this tutorial will be walking you through step by step on how to design, cut, and assemble this cake topper. And you can use the principles in the tutorial to create whatever saying you want to use. I'm just making a one cake topper, so for a first anniversary or a first birthday, something like that. So I'm going to walk you through the steps and then we're going to cut and assemble it. All right, let's jump into Cricut Design Space. So here we are in Cricut Design Space. If you're new to Cricut, this is the program that you will use to create your designs to cut on your Cricut machine. Since we're creating our image from scratch, we will need the text tool right here. And if you already have an image that you want to upload, you can also upload that. But this tutorial will show you how to type out a word and design it from scratch. So go ahead and click on your text tool. And this text box will appear. We can type out whatever word or sentiment we want to do. So I'm going to suggest using a one-word sentiment for your first cake topper. If you want to do multiple words, there is a little bit of a learning curve because you will need to connect all of your words so that they are held together as a single cake topper. So I would recommend just starting with a single word to start, and then as you build confidence, you can add more words and create a larger phrase. So here's our image. If we want to resize that, we can drag one of the corners and just pull it bigger, or we can adjust the font size. If I were to cut this out right now, I'd have an individual O, N, and E. Whereas if we look back at the cake topper that I've already created, you can see that it's all one image. So it's all held together with the script font. So we want to choose a font that will hold our word together so that we can just have a single image on one popsicle stick. So to design that, I have a couple of options. I can squish this together so that they're all together, or I can adjust the font to be a script font. Choosing a font is probably the hardest part in design, in my opinion. So to adjust your font, what I did is I clicked on my words selected, and then up at the top, I'm going to choose this drop down here. If you're a Cricut Access subscriber or on your free trial, anything with an A will be included in your subscription. Or you can choose this System tab here, and you can use any font that's already installed on your computer. If you don't know how to install fonts on your computer, I do have another YouTube video on that I will link in the video description. So I'm using a system font today. Again, this is the hardest part about choosing a font because there's so many great options. So scroll through, play with the font. I have one in mind, it's called Julietta, so I'm gonna select that. And then you can see that it changed. Now, I could cut this as is, and I would have really, really thin pieces here. So again, looking back at my example, you can see that those lines would be even thinner than what I have here. So I want to increase the boldness and the thickness of that stroke so that it's a little more rigid and has a little bit more stability on my cake topper. So to do that, I'm going to resize my image to be around the size of my final project. So I want it to be around 6 inches. So I'm going to drag the corner. I could also adjust the size up at the top here. So if I know the exact width, let's say I want it to be 6.3. I can adjust it by typing in the exact dimensions. And since that's locked, it will skew and scale proportionally. So 6.3 is the size that I want my cake topper to be, but I want to increase the thickness of all of my lettering. To do that, I'm going to add an offset. So up here at the top, we're going to select offset. And you can move this little dot to be as thick or as thin as you want. So for my example, I did 0.085, I believe, maybe 0.08. Let's do 0.08. So just a very slight offset, and then I'm going to click apply. And it welded my offset results. So you can see here that my image is now one single image, whereas these were individual letters. So even though it looked like it was a script font, if I were to cut that out, I'll ungroup it so you can see it. So let's click ungroup. If I were to cut that out with my Cricut, I would get a O, N, and E, even though it looks like it was all together. If you wanted to cut it this thin, you could come down to this option here and choose Unite, and that would cut it as a single image as opposed to the individual letters. But since I wanted to increase the thickness, I was able to increase the thickness and weld it all in one step. So I'm going to delete this option here, and we are going to cut this option out. So my image did grow. It grew to 6.46, so just make sure that those dimensions still work with what you want to do and you like the way it looks. At this time would be your chance to change your font, change the size, all that good stuff. My cake topper is made up of 4 components. So I have craft board in the middle, and then I have 2 glitter pieces on the front and on the back. So depending on how thick you want your cake topper to be, you can decide how many layers you want it to be. So I'm going to create a copy, so I can click duplicate here, or I can right click and click duplicate. So I want 2 copies, and I'm going to cut those out of black craft board. So I have them set to be black to represent my black craft board. In addition to that, I want another copy for the front that I will cut out of glitter cardstock. So I'm going to duplicate it again, and I'm going to change it to silver to represent the glitter cardstock. So I'm going to click on the image, then choose this little square here, this colored square, and I'm going to choose gray to represent the color that I'm cutting. Now this part is a little confusing for beginners. I'm going to make 1 more copy of the gray option, and I want this to be on the back side, but I can't cut it like that since I want it to be glued to the back. If I cut it that same orientation, I couldn't glue it on the back side. So if you look at this side, you'll notice that it's actually the mirror image of the word 1. So I need to mirror my image in Design Space. And I'm going to click on this image here and choose flip, and then choose flip horizontal. And now when I go to glue that, it will be the correct orientation for the back. Okay, so we've made a lot of progress. Let's save that so we don't lose anything. So I'm going to click save and type in cake topper and then save that. I'm using my Cricut Maker 3, but you'll want to make sure that you're selected to whatever machine you're using and then choose Make It. If you see a pop-up on your screen, make sure to choose that you want to cut it on a mat. So now you'll see on my mat preview that I have 2 silver glitter options and 2 black. So this is exactly what I want it to look like. I could make it a little smaller so I could cut them side by side, but I'm okay with them not being cut side by side since I want them to be as big as possible. So I'll leave it just like this, but if you want to adjust where they are in your mat, you can adjust it at this point. So this looks good to me. You can even squish them together closer, adjust them however you want. So it looks good. Now I'm going to continue on and connect to my machine. On this screen, you'll want to tell your Cricut machine what material you're cutting. If you're using an Explore Air 2, you may have to turn your dial to custom if you don't have this window popping up automatically. If you don't see the type of material you need, you can choose Browse All Materials and then search a keyword. So I'm going to search glitter, and a lot of options come up. So I'm going to use glitter cardstock as my option and click done. And this is a thicker glitter cardstock, so I am going to increase the pressure to more. If this is your first time cutting the material, you may want to consider doing a test cut first so that you don't waste a whole bunch of material if this doesn't cut through. I've already cut this material, so I know that the setting works, but if you never cut it, you may want to just add a single letter or a star to your canvas and cut it out to make sure that it cuts through. So we're ready to load our material onto our mat. So this is a cutting mat. It's sticky to hold our material in place. And the glitter cardstock that I'm using is by Recollections, and you can purchase it at Michael's. It's not like a chunky glitter. It's actually like a flat laminated glitter, so it doesn't spread glitter everywhere. So I'm going to load that with the glitter side facing me, and I'm just going to stick it onto a standard grip mat. And if you want to use a brayer, you can brayer it down, or you can just press it down with your hands. And then I have my Cricut machine right here ready to go. So I'm going to load my mat underneath these little guides. And then while still holding, so I have my hand kind of pushing against the rollers, I'm going to click the load button, and that will load my mat into my machine, and it will feed it in and test to make sure that I have the correct length. Before I click this flashing go button, I did want to talk about the blade. We're using the fine point blade, and you'll want to make sure that your blade is nice and clear, free of debris, and then you'll want to make sure that that is seated all the way in the housing. So to make sure it's seated all the way, I like to just set it into the housing and then close the clamp in so that I know that it's not too high or low. When I click the go button, I've already told my Cricut what settings I'm using, so the blade will automatically adjust to the right depth. Okay, so I'll show you this in real time, so if you're new to Cricut, you can see how fast, or maybe you think this is slow, how slow it cuts, but it will cut, and it's doing multiple passes. So it's doing 2 passes over this material since it's a little bit thicker. So I just finished cutting, and if it's your first time and you forgot to do that test cut and you're curious if it cut through, my tip is that while it's still loaded in, I know this is very tempting to push, but don't push it yet. While it's still loaded in, you can just gently lift your material up to ensure that it cut all the way through, and you can see here that it did. If for whatever reason it didn't, or you're having an issue pulling it up, before you unload it, you can actually push the go button again and it will do another set of passes. So your cut is not lost. You can send it through again, but if it looks good, go ahead and press the unload button. So we've cut out our glitter and now we can unload it. And my recommendation for unloading anything is flip over your mat and then push the project onto whatever surface you're working on. So I just like to push down, and your mat, when you first start, is very sticky. So if you need to de-stick it before doing this project, you can stick it on a t-shirt or a towel and kind of stick it a little bit so that it's a little bit easier to use. So you can see that it's kind of coming up. If you don't like how that feels, you can use any type of spatula. You don't have to use a Cricut branded spatula, but you can kind of just work your way through and kind of lift your material up and off. So if you are somebody that likes to see what you're doing and you don't want to blindly peel your design off, you can use a spatula and just work across your project. And I still have a good sized scrap that I could use for additional cake toppers or more projects. So I'm going to save that. And now I have the ones on the mat. So I'm going to flip my mat over, and using kind of a combination of both, I'm going to use my spatula and rolling and just pop these off my mat. Any little inside pieces that are left on your mat, you can use your spatula or a credit card or scraper to get those off. So I have my glitter ones cut out, and you can see that when I go to assemble this, that when I put them together, it's glittery on the front and on the back. So that's why you had to cut the mirror image of the one. So we have the one image front and back. Okay, so now that those are cut out, we need to make the inside of our topper sandwich. So I'm going to load on my craft board. This is thicker material, craft board. It's Cricut brand, but you can use any type of craft board. It's just like a heavy weight, thicker material. You can see on Design Space that my black mat is selected, and now I need to change the material. So I'm going to choose Browse All Materials and type in Craft. And then I'm going to choose Craft Board, and done. I'm also going to increase the pressure just to a little bit more so that I know that it cuts through. Then we're going to load our craft board into the machine the same way, where I hold it in place and load it, and we can cut our project. This just finished cutting, so again, I just like to lift to make sure it cut all the way through, which it did, so I can unload that. The clear sheet that came with your mat, you'll want to make sure to store your mat with that on to preserve the stickiness. So don't throw away that little clear sheet. You'll want to put that back on and then store this away. So I have all of my pieces to assemble. So I have 2 layers, and you don't need to do 2. If you just want 1, it will be a little less thick. So it just depends on the look you're going for. So I'm going to use 2, and then we'll add the glitter to the top and the glitter to the back so that it will be 4 pieces all together to make 1 cake topper. So let's talk about assembly. You have so many options in the craft world on how to glue these together, and I'm going to share my favorite, but by no means do you have to do my technique. You can absolutely use whatever glue you want. I would recommend this Xyron sticker maker. So this sticker maker, I actually owned the smaller size, the 3-inch version. I'll link both. The 3-inch version is really super affordable, and I used that for years because I didn't want to invest in the larger one. And now that I have the larger one, I can't imagine my life without it. So this little thing, it folds up and you just open it up and then you place your object in the front, crank the side, and then on the back, there's a cutter and you just cut your project off and it applies adhesive to whatever you ran through. This is a really, really cool product. So after you run it through, I just use a brayer so that the plastic will pick up all the excess adhesive. And you can run multiple images. So I could use all of this extra space. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just showing you my one image. And then I like to use a sharp point to kind of just go around my image so that the adhesive is only on the paper. Okay, so once your word is traced, now you can peel off the plastic. And you can see that the excess adhesive is on this plastic. And now there is adhesive on my word. And now I just created one big craft board sticker. So this has adhesive on the back and I'm going to secure it to this layer here. So to do that, I'm just going to peel it off. Slowly so I don't bend it. And you can see the adhesive all along the back evenly coated. And I'm going to line this up as best as I can and glue it together. So now I have both layers secured together, and next we're going to add on the glitter. To add the glitter, I'm going to use the same Xyron sticker maker. So I'm going to run it through the machine with the pretty side facing up. So I'll run both layers through. So my first, I want to reiterate that is not a necessary step. You can absolutely use a permanent adhesive tape runner or regular glue. So do not feel like you need to use the Xyron Creative Station. So now I'm going to take the glitter and add it to the front of my 2 layers of craft board. Depending on your project colors, you do see the black craft board on the side, so you will want to choose a color material that you're okay seeing on the edges. Of course, the main view will be from the front, but you can catch glimpses of the craft board, so pick a color that you're okay seeing on the sides. The Xyron adhesive that I'm using is permanent, so as this sets up, it becomes super permanent and these layers are stuck together. So I just have that last layer to glue on, and this is where I want to talk about a couple of options. So if you don't want your stick to show through to the other side, you can add your stick now and then cover it with your last glitter layer. The only reason that I don't do that, you can see my example here, I glue it after, is I don't like that there's a little bit of a bubble. So if I show you this other example, when you go to glue your layers together, there's a little bit of a gap. So these skewers are a little thicker, but I sandwiched in the skewers on this one, and I don't love how that looks. So I personally don't do it that way, but if you want to sandwich in your skewer, that is an option so that it doesn't show. From the front view and from the back view, it looks fine. You don't see the skewer. So again, personal preference, but I'm going to show it to you by gluing on the stick after we apply this layer. If you forgot to score any area and there is excess glue, you can use a glue eraser and you can just kind of scrub the inside and it will pick up any glue or adhesive that you may have missed. So if you look close, there's no glue or adhesive on the sides of this, and it's because of that extra scoring. So I do recommend scoring along the edges because it will save you from having to use a glue eraser. So our last layer, we just need to apply this to the back and then we are almost done. With this technique, you really have no lifting at all because you know your adhesive is to the edge of every single layer. So that is one solid piece at this point, and it will just keep on getting stronger as that permanent adhesive sets up. So now we have our one. I mean, you could just use this as a decoration in itself, but if you want to make it a cake topper, we're going to take this skinny popsicle stick and just glue it right to the back. If you want to use a skewer, you can use a skewer and cut it down to size. These can be trimmed down by just scoring it with some scissors and snapping it. I do like the popsicle stick because I think it's a little bit stronger. You'll want to glue it so that the stick comes up pretty high in your image to give it a little bit more stability. And you'll just want to make sure you have enough room to stick it into the cake where it will stand up. So I probably should use one that's a little bit longer than this, but this will do. To apply the glue, I'm going to use my favorite glue gun. This one has a control tip. Of course, I'll link everything in the video description for you. And I'm going to just apply a little bit of glue to my skewer and then stick it on to hold it in place. I also really like this silicone mat because I don't have to worry about my self-healing mat burning and it catches all the glue drips. So I think I can link this too. If not, I'll link something similar. So my hot glue will set up pretty fast. And you can see when I hold my design that it's not flimsy, which is why I love adding all those extra layers because it's holding itself, it's rigid, and it looks really professional. So here is a look at the front and at the back. Again, I don't mind the look of the popsicle stick on the back since most people won't even see the back of your cake and you're just going to see that front view. And I just feel like it makes the edges so much tighter and cleaner than if you were to put this stick in between the layers. So of course, personal preference, but this is the way that I've always done it. And I absolutely love how these turn out. If you're looking for any of the products used in today's video, you can find the links to everything in the video description, including the paper, the popsicle sticks, everything. It will be linked. And if you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel as I post weekly tutorials on how to craft. And your support just means the world to me. So thank you for being here and thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.